kicked out and brought back in. We just had to have it where it was your name and it was showing up as,
It isn't him, it's a,
oh, okay.
It's just a.
Can you hear us? Everything good?
Yep, and
Yeah, I can hear you guys fine.
And recording. Yep, recording. All right,
Okay. Call the meeting in order for November 6th, Transit Committee at 8 o'clock. Roll call. We have everyone present besides Gary Bjork. Correct. John Minch. Yeah, he's on it, so good. Approval of minutes for the October 9th.
Make motion to approve minutes.
Motion been made second. Any discussion on the minutes? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Public comment, nothing else. Staff reports on to Austin here.
all right, good morning, everyone. Transit Commission meeting 11/6/24. Agenda today, ridership, financials, DCT funding, city subsidy, fleet, and any questions. Doorstop and Red Cedar ridership in October increased from 487 to 510, up 5% through the month. 3 more service days than September, down 8% on daily ridership. But since the second week in October, we've pretty much just had one doorstop bus instead of the 2 that would cover in the morning and afternoon. That Red Cedar route has been just me covering lunch breaks. So efficiency wise, we are doing very well with pretty much one bus out there at all times instead of 2 buses from 8 to 10 and then 2 buses from 2 to 4. So it's good to see that for October. Community route ridership decreased by 2 from September of 2077 down to 2075 in October. But looking at the service days, down 30%. Looking at it versus previous years, still best year to date for September and October. Kind of plateauing. Community Saturday maintaining that gap between last year, still having that best year ever, and doubling almost every other year. Belt route ridership. We've had great weather in October. So it's very weather dictative on ridership for that route. And that's maintained into the top third of rides for the stout route. For the most part of October, we had one of our 2 big buses in service on that route, which has really helped. I know there are some rides where it's 45, 48 riders, and that one's a 51 passenger bus. Currently, both the big buses, I'll talk more about that fleet slide. 24 financials are to the negative by 1.3% as of October. We spent some money through that. All is sitting pretty good. The big thing that's hurting us is 25,000 budgeted this year through 10 months of health insurance, and we're sitting at 52 just because a couple singles went on to family plans, which tripled twice. So other than that, no big expenses in October. Fuel budget is sitting about 22% high for the year. When we'll do a little bit better in November and we'll do a little bit better in December, but September and October as heavy months as any. When it comes to that. Service contracts is high. That's, we spent a lot of money on those GPSs, which is a one-time cost. And that's in there. And then in this causing a few of the negatives is the seal coat that we did, but spending any money on it. It's a one-time cost, so those will even out here in the coming months. Okay. I haven't done a breakdown like this in a while, if not ever, with kind of how we are funded. And this is how it is made up. So 5311 WisDOT revenue, that is calculated by total expenses minus total revenue of passenger revenue minus contra expenses equals your net expenses times 50% is the amount eligible for reimbursement, and that is what you're paid. So it's pretty much our total expenses for the year minus our passenger fare revenue times 50%, which gives you the 269 or 60. The rest needs to be made up with local subsidy and our 8521 revenue. So this is our human services grant. That's for that door-to-door bus service, as well as the volunteer driver program that we get every year. City Menominee subsidy, UW South subsidy, passenger fare revenue. That was an insurance reimbursement, and how it evens out at the end of the year. Why am I bringing this up right now? There's talk on the city subsidy of just as a whole. Gretchen could probably speak on this a little bit too, of what the discussion has been, but I think as a whole, there's a gap between the money needed for total subsidies for the city and what's wanted for that. So there's been talks about cuts, whether it's as a whole, whether it's different subsidies themselves. I think that's to be determined. But if you want to touch on that a little more.
Well, it's not as dire as zero. I did talk to Eric. But we are having to balance, since the ARPA funds rolled off and some of the other funding, and where we are pulling from without having to increase our, revenue from taxpayers. Subsidies are being looked at very closely. As far as I'm concerned, strong case for maintaining one of the very things that is needed even more in dire financial times.
Yes.
For our community. So, I'm pushing hard for keeping our subsidy.
So I gave the city council in our subsidy discussion last month, in their city council meeting that they have once a year, where there's a section for talking about your subsidy and why you should get the subsidy as an organization. And I just touched on mostly ridership and even 60% this year over last year, and over double the year before. And so that it's being utilized more now than ever. And we didn't ask for an increase. That's about as high level as I made it last month. And then I heard more about this gap and that it might not be a guarantee, which you should never expect it, but also it's been like that for 10 years for us. So I'll be talking about this a little bit more in depth tonight on why now more than ever it's being utilized and what the return on investment is for the city. And Dan will talk on that a little bit too tonight. But I put this together this morning, just showing passenger fares every year, city subsidy every year, stealth subsidy. I'm missing a few of those previous years pre-SAP in our data. And think, some might need a tweak or two, but I did what I could with the information I had. Where I drove for Dunn County Transit back in 2016. I'd have 0 riders sometimes a day on it. I've talked about this before. Even up until we changed the route in 2021, ridership was, there was big community numbers that you can look back 10 years on, but guaranteed 90% of that was stout overflow at the end of every hour. This, what I see in data now is true, close to 50% ridership of non-stout students. So now more than ever, community members are riding.
I think that's important to emphasize when you're speaking about it, because Stout is definitely viewed as the only riders. So mentioning that is
Yep.
very important.
And subsidy is not, there was one date in here that I thought the subsidy went up, or they requested it to go up. I thought it was around 2018, but in my numbers that I saw in our system, it was 25.4. We had that 10% increase for 2024, but it stayed the same. Stout subsidy has gone up here and there. Back in here, it was a little bit higher, but then we've gone up ever since, at least a few percent. Our budget has actually gone down in previous years, and now it is finally having that uptick with, just our employees are hitting that annual step, but pretty much everything else is maintaining that same budget, if not less. So, and passenger fares versus the total revenue has gone up every year, and the subsidies have mostly stayed the same, which means we are relying less on it. But it is still needed as much as ever. So if that subsidy went away, the gap is that 27,940. This is what it's costing us total per rider, and this is what you could say that subsidy is going towards per rider. Every year we're dropping it around 50% cost. How I calculated the stout cost per rider was the amount of students that rode the community bus. Now I took that off of their total subsidy from stout, and I applied that cost towards helping fund that community route. I don't know how they came up with their subsidy back when this was all set up, but Darren talked a little about 85% stout route, 15% community route, which is another way you could look at this. But key points to take away from this: 27,940 is about 30% of what it costs to run the community route. 2024 estimated costs around $88,000. So you're putting in 30% of the cost, and you're getting the service that benefits
50.
Yeah, 50%, as well as just people in the city. This isn't a county-wide thing. This is the city route. Some around the non-student population is what it's doing for ridership. Right under 10,000 and projected over 10,000 next year. 9,000 this year, 11,000 next year. And that's at a 25% increase. It increased 60% this year. So it's very conservative number that I put in there. At the discretion of the Transit Commission to make up that 27,940, if that subsidy went to zero, something would have to give. Even adding $1 to the ride is not gonna make that gap. So, which defeats the purpose of the route. It's supposed to be an economical way for anybody to obtain a ride, and then not even factored in 2 years that we were able to provide this route for free to 10,000 people a year or so.
I would just say I printed on 11 by 17, but there's document that's been provided to all of the city council members. I believe, right? Should have been in your packet.
Yeah, I think it was.
But that should summarize some of those numbers, yeah.
So last slide on this, factoring in total miles of the route, service hours of the route, multiplying on average of, this does not include our administrative costs of the operations supervisor itself, but just driver in the seat, on average of the hourly with, fringe benefits and stuff, calculates man-hour cost, estimated fuel cost, maintenance cost is our $22,000 budget divided by 3 for each route, which brings us to that. You factor in, we're sitting around, 2023 was a 64% deficit. 2024, 52%, forecasted for 2025, 49%. And then you pull that subsidy out of there, that's going back down to about an 80% deficit. So any other discussion on that?
So it sounds like you're obviously going to a meeting tonight with the city.
Yeah,
Yes.
the council meetings tonight instead of Monday because of the election.
Okay.
And so you're gonna speak during the,
Public comment, there's not a separate section for subsidies like
yeah, that
last
was last.
meeting, which I did speak at. Not into this depth, because I didn't realize the,
Thought process
of what was. Yeah, what, there was a gap and that something like this might need to be talked about. So I'll touch on that. And just the amount of riders that are utilizing the bus. There's a couple others from our organization speaking. It's a stout representative or two speaking on this. But.
well, I don't know, I look at the numbers and the ridership and the percentages comparison between, you know, the stout ridership compared to community ridership and subsidies paid or whatever, you know, and it's like your comment, it's like 30% cost for 50% ridership. So I think that's a really good deal, you know.
It's
Personally,
important to overcome the perception
I mean-
because it's the old perception that it's stout ridership. That's the perception that needs to be overcome, and the numbers just speak for themselves with that. And that's a given. And there's council members that didn't realize that about the community route.
I would understand if this was 2016.
Yeah.
And we were having goose eggs during every summer day, stuff like that, and it wasn't getting used. I'd be the first one to say, hey, this, you should cut this. Well, that's not the case. When I quit Bill's distributing and I said, hey, Craig, I'm going to Dunn County Transit. He said, is that bus that nobody rides around all day?
Right.
And I said, well, my goal is to change that. So I think we've done a good job doing that. And that's the perception, you know, that,
We perception lags, as
Yep.
we all know.
Yep.
In Dunn County, there's a lot of things that have changed a lot in the last 5 years, and folks don't realize it, so.
it's hard too with, all these subsidies. Probably 4 or 5 of them are places that we stop at every day,
Correct,
every hour.
it's noted.
Stepping stones, City Hall, the Milkweed Alliance bought passes, and then Bridge to Hope, those riders get on at the mail bus stop 2 blocks away, and Senior Center, we're taking. I can go on and on. How about they're all intertwined? So I understand that things are hard decisions, but like Dan and I talked before, this is it. You can see where the cost for service is with this. It's And you can see the return on it, so.
I'm shocked with the amount of people I've been seeing at bus stops with the new shelters and stuff that it's. I think this is probably the year that I've seen the most people on any bus in my 4 total years
Mhm.
living here.
The app is really great.
Go
You
ahead.
can watch where your bus is.
Yeah. Yeah,
Good, that one.
yeah, it's a lot better than that old one even.
I'm just gonna say that as a citizen of the city of Menominee, I certainly hope they continue on with the bus service. So-
I doubt, I mean, the council gets to make those end calls, but once it's presented in a way that everyone's up to speed. I got the sense that some of the council members weren't up to speed yet, how valuable the service is, and, I think it'll be fine.
7 o'clock tonight,
7 tonight.
7 tonight. That's what I had for report today.
Any other questions for him otherwise? Otherwise, there's nothing for 7 and 8. Next meeting will be December 11th. Unless it's just, we have to change it, we're doing.
In the second question.
Same place, same time, otherwise. Meeting's adjourned.